everybody, welcome to another video by Liminal Spaces. I've got to say spoiler alert. I don't think we say that often enough on this channel, but we everything we do is tons of spoilers, so I should say that more often. Okay, we're going to talk about the last episode in the first season of Star Trek Strange New Worlds. It's called A Quality of Mercy, which I find really bizarre. It's, I guess, a Shakespeare quote from Merchant of Venice. The quality of mercy is not strained. It droppeth as the gentle rain from heaven upon the place below. And that means that mercy is not constrained or bound or held down. Everyone has mercy to give, and they can give it freely at no cost. There's no problem with being merciful all the time. Right? That's the Shakespeare quote. Now, this is called A Quality of Mercy, which I guess means mercy has many qualities, and they're only going to talk about one of them. I don't know. I mean, that's a tiny, stupid thing. This is not my favorite episode. I'm just going to get that out there right now. It's all right. It's a Star Trek episode, right? And I do enjoy that quite a bit. I do have some notes. So we're just going to go over. This is the episode that is a remake of an episode from the original series. And we're going to talk a lot about that original episode and this episode because they're kind of working together. Okay? They do a neat thing in this episode. Like, it's hard to justify doing a remake, especially when you're dealing with canon. Right? And I'm not a big canon person. I don't know all the rules, and you can't do that because in episode 27, right? Like I don't know. But I do understand that if you just give Pike a Kirk episode, like literally a Kirk episode, then that means you've jumped 10 years, right? Kirk is happening 10 years later, I think is about the distance. Pike has to get hurt before Kirk takes over. Pike is not hurt yet. He cannot do Kirk things. So they do kind of a neat thing in this episode to justify this weird remake by dealing with Pike's knowing the future. And I wasn't really happy about this. Because I want that to go away, of course. I just want a Monster of the Week show. I don't care. I don't want future Pike bugging past Pike, and Pike can't make decisions because he doesn't know if he's going to die or he's not going to die. And right, we don't need a compromised captain. We just need a captain, right? But still a good episode. So Pike's future self comes back because Pike meets one of the kids that are going to die in the accident that hurts him. And when he meets that kid, he freaks out. Understandably, right? He knows the kid's going to die. He knows he's going to get hurt. It freaks him out. He decides he's going to tell the family the future. And the minute he makes that decision, future Pike appears to him. Now, future Pike is not hurt. Future Pike says, I changed our situation. I saved everybody, including myself, and it ruined everything. The Klingons have shown me that you not dying in that accident ruins everything. Now, I don't like this because I liked what Una was saying about you're in control of your own fate. There's no reason you can't save them and everything should be fine. I agree with that 100%. I don't think we need to stick to this. I mean, you know, I don't know. I feel like they're sort of stuck in this weird place that average Star Trek fans don't really care about, right? There are people who really like Strange New Worlds that haven't seen Discovery. Of course, right? Strange New Worlds really took off. It's the Star Trek, right above, barely above Lower Decks, which is the second Star Trek, right? Um, but so Pike zaps him into the future so that he can see that the things that he does that Kirk should be doing ruin the future. So, on top of all of that, it's a time travel episode, and I don't like time travel episodes because everybody knows all you do is kill everybody off and then go back in time and everything's good again. Right? I mean, the manipulative, weird things that they can do in time travel episodes are just so played out and boring, you know? So this episode had a couple strikes for me right off the bat. They do a good job of it, of course. All the actors are great, but this was not my cup of tea. So let's jump back to the original episode and let's talk a tiny bit about that. So that one is called Balance of Terror, and it's actually a really good episode. It is a submarine episode. So it's a war episode, okay? It's about war, it's about fighting, it's about bigotry and all that kind of stuff. Bigotry towards the enemy, all that kind of stuff. And in this specific subgenre, it's a submarine battle. The bad guys have a ship, the Romulans, have a ship that can cloak. But it takes so much power while they're cloaked that they cannot, and I shouldn't even say why they're cloaked, because there are times in the episode when they're not cloaked, but they can't do anything, which is weird. But it takes so much power that they don't have any sensors. They are riding blind as if they're in a submarine. And of course, the Enterprise is blind because the other ship is invisible. So it's like they're in a submarine as well. Spock finds a way to track them, even though they can't see them. So it's like they have sonar or something, right? So these two blind ships are just chasing each other and trying not to cause a war. I'm going to assume that you've seen the episodes. I don't want to go into huge details about the wedding and all that stuff, but I am going to talk about key points throughout. Speaking of that, we do get to the wedding. This was a really crazy way to introduce a red shirt, I thought, right? Star Trek, of course, is famous for introducing you to new characters and then killing them. And in this one, the new characters happen to be getting married right at the beginning of the episode. They don't both die, just one of them dies, right? The husband dies. And I thought that was pretty gutsy, you know. I guess they wanted to lend weight to their red shirts by somehow trying to ingratiate us to them as quickly as possible since we just met them. The same thing kind of happened in the previous Strange New Worlds episode. They had that red shirt that got killed off pretty quick. He was getting promoted at the beginning of the episode. So he comes up on stage and everybody congratulates him and he gets a little medal or whatever. And, you know, he's promoted. So you're like, oh, I like him. Oh, he's dead. You know. So I guess that they were trying to do something like that with the wedding. This is a very military-based episode. Now, I'm not a military person. I'm not into military history or anything like that. I'm kind of afraid of it, to be honest. Mostly because of my generation, because of Vietnam and people getting drafted and all that stuff. I wasn't old enough to be drafted, of course. My dad was, right? And my wife's dad was in Nam as a Marine. I think he was a mechanic. And it's a thing for our generation, right? There's this kind of weird distrust of the military. And I don't know if it's founded or not. I feel like it is, of course, right? But this is a military episode. But what I appreciate about that side of it is they like to show off the command structure and the giving of orders. There are some neat conversations in this original episode where they'll be like preparing phasers, phasers prepared, fire phasers, and then they cut to another room and the person's like, fire the phasers. You know, like they have this whole chain thing going on, and I like that. I like seeing the way things work. So I appreciate that, and they don't stick with it, you know, which is okay, I guess. I don't need a show that's exactly the same every time, you know, but there's a word that they use when they're trying to hell someone. It's something like they're not responding to my. Shoot, I can't remember what the word is, but it's not attack, but it's like attack, right? They use a different word because of the militariness of this episode. And it's very interesting to hear all that going on. I appreciated that out of this original episode. So, one really cool thing about this episode is the bad guy is very, very likable. And I don't think they quite captured that in the newer version. And I think that hurts the show a tiny bit. This other captain, you really feel for the fact that they are trapped in a society that their wisdom is beginning to make them realize maybe isn't in the best place. But they're trapped. Like they've got to go through with everything, you know. And one of his friends dies during the episode in the various attacks that are happening. This captain really grows on you. And I think that that's a very cool thing. They try to do it in the new episode, and they've just got too much going on. But we'll get to that in a bit. A lot of this episode is about bigotry. There is a person on this ship whose entire family was part of the original Romulan Starfleet war. So now that war was 100 years ago, okay? So that makes it a little bit weird, right? Like World War II is not 100 years ago. And I know there are still people who are affected by that war. I know there are. But it's a very small number, you know, and by the time the next 20 years goes by, it's going to be a thing in the history book. You know what I mean? And of course, you can say, you know, well, Star Trek people probably live longer, and they probably do, right? Because their technical advancements in medicine and so on are great. So they probably do live longer. So that stuff could stick with them a little bit longer. But there's a person on the bridge who hates Romulans. I mean, hates them, right? And Kirk reminds this person over and over again, you know, leave your bigotry back in your room. They are not pulling their punches about this subject. It's very interesting. And that was only, 25 years after World War II? You know, so that's pretty cool. That's pretty neat. So that's a major kind of thread through this episode, and it's very important. And in the end, the person gets saved. Spock is the person that he vents his aggression toward, because Spock is the other on the ship anyway, right? And of course, there's the big surprise that Romulans look like Klingons. Or, sorry, not Klingons. Vulcans. Romulans look like Vulcans. So everybody's like, Spock, you know. Even Spock is like, wow. So they do some really neat stuff in this episode, some really important, cool stuff, and I can see why they chose it, even though I don't think it worked out well. But that's a major theme of this episode: is don't be a bigot. there's some tactical stuff in here, and it's a tiny bit muddy. I like it. I do wish it was a little cleaner, but it's cool. They do some interesting tactical stuff. As the Romulans are running and Kirk is chasing them, they realize there's an comet. There's a comet close by. So the enemy ship actually changes course to go toward the comet. Now, this whole thing is so cat and mouse because the Romulans can't tell if there's a ship behind them or not. They do detect something, but they're not sure. The crew does not think it's a ship. The captain does think it's a ship. And then, of course, for Kirk and our group, everyone on the crew wants to attack the ship, except for Bones, of course. The crew wants to attack the ship. Kirk wants to hang back and look for the perfect moment to do it. So you've got this sort of back and forth. Are we going to do this or are we going to do this? Is that a real ship? Is it a fake ship? What is happening? Right? And that's kind of the place that both the ships are in. So the captain of the enemy ship, the Romulans, sees the comet and says, ooh, let's go in there. Because if we go in there, they won't be able to detect us. Now, a comet tail is probably pretty big. I guess that's a good idea. Okay, that's the plan. So they turn, they're going, and then Kirk is like, ooh, this could be our chance. And before this happens, I do got to say, there is a scene where the captain is collecting everybody's opinion, which is excellent. It is so well written because you've got the captain saying, okay, what are we going to do? And of course, bigot guy is like, we must attack, and Kirk's like, I want to hear everybody's opinion. That's why we're here. Please tell me why. And he explains that if we don't attack, people will think we're cowards, and then they'll turn around and attack us, and it'll be terrible. Right? And he starts attacking Spock because Spock looks like the Romulans. And then Bones jumps in, and Bones says, you cannot attack because you will start a war. You will kill billions of people right now. You cannot attack. And then Spock says, I agree with bigot guy, which is awesome. It just comes out of nowhere, right? Of course. And Spock explains, if they're like we used to be, because they look like us, then we have got to attack because they are insane. And I really liked that. I thought that the way that structure goes together, because you got to hear from Bones, right? Of course. And Spock is kind of the one that's choosing between the two. You'd think it'd be Kirk, because Kirk has to make the final decision. But when Spock says, I agree, then Kirk's like, okay, let's do it. Let's attack. It's a really well-written scene. And I think it's one that, if you haven't seen it in a while, you really should check it out. It's incredibly well done. But they decide, okay, fine, we're going to attack. And because we know they're going into this comet, that's the perfect time. Because when they go in, we'll be able to see them. Because all that dust in the tail is going to bounce off of them, and it's going to show us the shape of the ship. So, okay, they're going to follow them. They go to the comet. As the Romulan ship goes into the comet, Kirk fires at it and hits it. And then Kirk swoops around to the other side and figuring, well, when they come flying out with all their destroyed space debris and stuff, we'll just hit him again and blow him up. I think is the plan, right? It's a tiny bit muddy. It's not perfect, but it's pretty good. So he zips around. The ship doesn't come out. So then Kirk panics and says, "Oh, alpha beta maneuver or whatever," right? And they try to get away, but the other ship uncloaks and fires its giant weapon at him. So Kirk just slams it into reverse. Now, they don't talk about whether the weapon is actually tracking them. Like, I don't know if they could just go up a little bit and it would just fly under them. I'm not sure. But they just slam it in reverse and the weapon is coming towards them. And it's not going to catch them for like 5 minutes. Like, they literally have all the time in the world to figure out what they're going to do while they're flying backwards with this weapon coming towards them. They can't come up with anything. Somebody does say, if only we had phasers, we could shoot it. And of course, they lost their phasers. I think when the Romulans, when Kirk was waiting for him to come out of the other side of the comet tail, I think the Romulans just shot him with normal weapons and then launched their big weapon. Kirk's ship is damaged. So they can't just shoot the thing and hope it blows up. But they're backing up, and of course, slowly it disperses. There's a very interesting scene where one of the yeomen comes in, a female comes in, and she's like, "Should I keep doing scanners, or are we all just going to die?" Right? And Kirk's like, "Yeoman." And then they turn to watch, and then she comes up behind him, and he puts her arm around her. And they can't do anything. So they just back up, and it starts to dissipate, but it still hits them. So it does a little bit more damage, right? So the ship is a little bit damaged. The other ship, they can't sense. So Kirk is like, "I think they'll think we're destroyed." And they go taking off toward the neutral zone, and Kirk just gets back behind him as the shadow again. I don't know. It's a tiny bit iffy, but it's still really well done. And that whole sequence going into the comet, I thought was pretty cool. I do wish that the tactics were spelled out a little bit more so that we knew exactly what happened, because there's a lot of respect gained for each of the captains based on the way they deal with that. I think Kirk says, "I underestimated him before, I'm never going to do it again," something like that. So it's an important, neat scene, but it was a tiny bit muddy. It was a tiny bit unclear exactly what was happening. And I wish we could have seen more of that. This episode, I didn't have to look for this original series episode. It is on the 4K version of season 1 of Strange New Worlds. The reason they put it on there, number one, is because, of course, they remade it for the new show. But number two is it's in 4K. They literally upped that specific episode to 4K. Now, this probably means that we will get the original series in 4K eventually. One thing I did notice is if you buy the DVD version of the original series, you get the original TV episode with no changes, and you get one with all updated special effects, so it looks like The Next Generation or whatever. It came out a long time ago, so back in that day, which is really cool. You get both. Now, older people like me are probably going to want to watch it the way it was, the way they remember it on TV. Seeing those new effects is fun. It's enjoyable, but I don't know. There's just a certain nostalgia to the way it used to look. You know what I mean? So older people will probably not want the newer special effects, and younger people probably will, I guess. I'm assuming. So that's a neat thing to get. This new version, you don't get to choose. It just has the new special effects. And that might be an indication that if they do release the original series in 4K, it is it won't have the possibility of viewing the episodes the way they originally were. And I don't even think, I don't own, well, that could be wrong now. My brother got a lot of Star Trek for us. I don't know that I own the original series on Blu ray, but I think I do. But I don't think it gives you the choice. I think it just has the special effects. So, just throwing that out there as an interesting thing. So, there's another really great scene in this episode where Kirk is beginning to question. That's not true. Kirk is the perfect captain. Everything he does is right. That's the television show. We want to watch heroes do cool things. That's what we're watching. So there's a tiny moment with Kirk and Bones that's really cool, and this is going to be important for this discussion. Kirk is questioning whether or not he's doing the right thing, and Bones is his confidant, and they do a cool thing. This happened with Pike in the original episode, a very important scene in the very first Star Trek episode ever filmed, which was Pike, not Kirk. In that, way back in 66 or whatever, maybe it was earlier because they had to make another pilot, blah, blah, blah. It could have been 65. I'm not sure. But way back, Pike really questions what's happening, and the doctor comes in to kind of give him a pep talk. And the doctor has alcohol, and they have a drink together. And Pike is like, I can't be responsible for all these lives. I don't know what to do. And the doctor kind of helps him through it. Now, in this scene, you've got Kirk and the doctor. The doctor comes in, and Kirk says, I'm not sure, I'm not positive I'm doing the right thing. And he looks to Bones, and Bones doesn't say anything. He just thinks for a moment. And Kirk says, I'm not looking for an answer. I just had to say it. And that's it, right? That's Kirk versus Pike. Pike needs, from the original series, Pike needed that confidant and that pep talk and to get that stuff out. Kirk just needs to get it out. That's it. Now, Bones does have a brilliant response, which is there are billions and billions and billions of life forms all over the universe. Please don't kill the one that is Kirk, right? Which is perfect Bones. Genius. And I don't think the current show, Strange New Worlds, is there yet with this stuff. And I believe, honestly, the reason is because they're only doing 10 episodes a year, right? They've got 2 seasons under their belt. They're probably writing the 3rd right now. That'll give them the amount of episodes from 1 season. At this rate, it's going to take them, 12 years to hit the 4-year mark when most normal TV shows become truly iconic. The 4th season of some really big shows are points where it's not where it gets good. That's not right. It's good from the beginning. But everything just becomes really together. And this 10 episode seasons, I don't know. I don't know how it's going to go. They're doing fine work. It's nothing to panic about. But I do wish they would do more episodes. They don't need to be racking their brains to come up with the next new show when they've only got 2 seasons of the current hit. They don't need 7 shows at once. Go with 2 or 3 and do more episodes of them. But, anyways, the new show. Okay, A Quality of Mercy. So, like I already explained, it starts out with Pike. We realize it's a time travel episode. He goes into the future. He is the captain of the Enterprise when Kirk should be. He literally appears at the wedding that opens the previous episode. We meet the red shirts, and then the red alarm goes off and he goes running, right? Find out that there's bases along the border that are being blown up. The bigot in the episode is the pilot, which I don't like at all. Like I was saying before, it was 100 years ago, right? And she doesn't care about Romulans in her actual show. So what would happen in 10 years where nothing happens with Romulans that would make her suddenly detest Romulans? Now they try. I feel like they were trying. I mean, maybe something got cut. There's no deleted scenes for this. But it looked like maybe they were trying to say she was just mad because those things along the border were blown up. But that doesn't ring at all. I mean, she just hates Romulans, right? Which is just bizarre. It doesn't make any sense that they just made her that guy. They could have, I mean, if they really, and I hate making excuses because the writers should have done something. They could have put some relatives on one of those bases that of hers that got killed, right? You know, but then you would think, well, maybe that would compromise her so she wouldn't be allowed to be on the bridge, which makes total sense. Why is she such a bigot, right? So I don't know. I don't know. It was a very bizarre choice to make her that. So they get going with this, and it's well done, right? You're wondering to yourself, wow, what is Pike going to do different? And then suddenly Kirk shows up. Like, Kirk is in the episode, which is really, I mean, they literally say, like, there's no ships within 10 hours. It has to be us. And then Kirk's there. And I'm sure they explained that part away. I just didn't catch that, but still. I'm like, why are you doing this? And I know they think that if they don't have Kirk in their show, then they don't have a show, which is completely false. Just gotta say that we do not need that. It's fun every once in a while, but especially in a show where we're judging Pike versus Kirk, we don't need Kirk showing up and muddying everything up. That just gets really weird. But Kirk shows up, and this brings up a really big thing that I've been wanting to talk about for a while, which is actor types. We've already talked about it a little bit. I know you've already heard. I'm worried about the guy who's playing Kirk. Not because he's not a good actor, but because he's not Kirk's type. And I feel like, and I'm making all this up, okay? But I feel like they decided we're going to just remake the old show. Fans are driving us nuts with all their stupid complaints. Just give them the old show again. Fine, we'll grab a Kirk. And they grab this actor, right, who plays Pike. And he is Kirk. Straight up. He's Kirk. He's Kirk's type. Let me say it that way. He is Kirk's type. He's just this big, loud Boy Scout, fun person who saves the day and everybody loves, and he sleeps with the women and does Kirk stuff, right? He's Kirk. Pike is smaller. Pike has darker hair. And these are weird things to talk about, but this is actor type, right? If you're going to cast the boy next door, the person who's always there, but then one day, maybe you have a female character who can't find love and she doesn't know what to do. And then one day they bump into each other in the grocery store. They've known each other for 10 years. And she realizes, I kind of like you. That's the boy next door, right? And you don't cast a big, outgoing, handsome, super fun person as the boy next door. Because if you, that doesn't jive with the story, right? Maybe a little bit quieter, a little bit smaller, a little bit shyer. Maybe they have darker hair instead of lighter hair, right? There are certain images that we associate because of Hollywood that we associate with movies, right? So Pike is smaller, darker, shorter. He's got darker hair, right? He worries a little bit more. He doesn't smile as often. He is a different type than Kirk. So they get together. They say, we're just going to give him the old show. They grab Kirk. They grab a couple other people. They say, we'll just introduce the other characters as we go. Don't worry about it. And then some genius says, you know what we should do? We should make this Pike. And they're like, and the producers and the writers are like, oh my God, that's brilliant. And the casting director is like, wait, I just cast Kirk. You can't make Kirk Pike. And they're like, no, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. It'll be fine. And you know what else we should do? We should put Kirk in the show. And then the casting director is like, no. You know? So what we've got is Kirk playing Pike and Pike playing Kirk. We have these two opposites, and they work well together, right? You don't want two Kirks together, and you don't want two Pikes together. You can't really watch that. It'd be just weird. But you can have a Kirk and a Pike together. So everything's fine. Nobody's horribly messing up or anything weird. And I haven't heard any real backlash from the community, which I think is great, right? So it's fine. Everything's fine, but I'm just a tiny bit worried for this Kirk character. And I feel like in season 2, we see some weird not Kirk things, which is just fine. But it's something that I want to point out, right? If you're coming to this thinking, can't wait for more Kirk, you have Kirk. Kirk is Pike. Just watch Pike. That's your Kirk, right? Yeah. So that's just a bizarre thing that I wanted to bring up. I feel like this show is doing some weird stuff, and luckily it doesn't matter. Everything seems to be playing out just fine. I think the casting director did a brilliant job of sneaking in a Pike when they should have been grabbing a Kirk, right? So that we could have our original Kirk, which is Pike, and we could have our new Kirk, which is Pike. So everything's fine. But that is a weird topic. When you see Kirk, James Kirk, I'm not talking about Sam at all, right? Sam is a whole different ballgame. When you see James Kirk acting strangely, it's okay. It's because he's really just Pike in disguise, right? Okay. Anyways, so that was hard. Bringing in Kirk just muddies everything up. We don't get to compare Kirk to Pike because they're just arguing, and so they're taking each other's ideas, and then you're like, is there any difference? Because I can't tell. So that doesn't work out great. They do an interesting thing with the comet thing. They do not have the commander turn into the comet. They just, I guess, have him going toward the comet, and he doesn't bother to change. Oh, and another thing, they've got 2 ships. Kirk's ship is there and Pike's ship is there. So there's 2 shadows following the... but they don't bring up shadows. I do not know. I think they just act like they have no sensors at all, which I guess is okay, right? So, I don't know. There's 2 ships, and then there's the bad guy's ship, and they're just flying straight towards the comet. And then they're like, ooh, I know what we'll do. We'll have one of us stop on this side of the comet, the other one go on that side of the comet, and then when it goes in, we can shoot it, and when it comes out, we can shoot it, and we'll just already be in position, right? Which is okay, I guess. Once again, in the original episode, it was kind of muddy anyway, so this is fine, I guess. But they do a kind of cool thing where, and I don't know why Spock didn't track this. Yeah, maybe it's not cool. Maybe it's a mess. I don't know. They don't go into the comet at all. The Romulans just stop outside the comet and wait for them to get all set up with their crazy plan and then just nuke the crap out of them. Like, they take out Kirk's ship. I think Kirk loses his entire crew. Maybe not. Maybe they beam a few people over, right? But they take out that ship. And then they shoot at the Enterprise, like in the old one. In the Enterprise, they don't really back up. They have it go a lot faster. They just have the enemy ship shoot from far away. And it hits them, and they're like, ah, and then they're like, oh, we're not dead. Why are we not dead? And Spock's like, it must be too far away, which I don't like as much because, once again, it just feels like one of those weird tricks, like a time travel episode, right? It's like the old Buck Rogers and stuff, or Tarzan, when you'd see him get killed by a lion, but then next week when you go back to the movies, he actually jumped out of the way and the lion never touched him. And you think, did I actually see the lion kill him, or did I just imagine that? Right? So I feel like it's kind of like that. Like, oh, the weapon's coming right at him, and it's hitting them. They are dead. And then you're like, oh, they're not dead. And then there's this goofy reason, which makes sense because of the original show. But the original show did the smart thing of having them back up for 5 minutes. So you can see it dissipate as it goes, and they can all realize together, oh, we're not going to die because we're backing up. That's interesting. So that was a weird part. But those ships get messed up. Kirk comes over to this ship. Kirk's really mad at Pike because he hesitated. And I'm not sure what he hesitated about. That's not really clear in the episode. I don't know. I don't know. It just gets really murky and strange. And then they end up, as they get close to the neutral zone, they decide, enough, we're just going to attack. They just attack it, and they disable the enemy ship. And they have a truce where they're not going to fire. And I guess this is where the Pike difference occurs. Kirk would have found a way to destroy the ship, even though Pike doesn't have phasers and can't get them. Like, literally, Pike talks the Romulans into a ceasefire. And he says, just for 2 hours, let's not shoot at each other. Let's bury our dead. Let's work on our ships. And then let's talk again after the 2 hours. So Spock is working on the lasers, the phasers, with Scotty, which is kind of fun, I guess. They don't actually show Scotty, but you hear a very thick Scottish accent. So that's kind of fun. They don't have phasers. They don't have weapons. They work on their ship. Even after the 2 hours, Kirk still doesn't, or Pike still doesn't have phasers. Like, they don't have weapons at all. The Romulan ship is, I guess, a little better off. They don't really tell us the state of the Romulan ship because while they were in the 2 hour ceasefire, one of the Romulan underlings called the fleet and has the whole fleet come. And then Kirk shows up with a fleet of useless drone vessels, thinking that the Romulans don't know what our ships look like, so it doesn't matter. And then the Romulans attack, all the humans escape, except for the husband of the wedding group. He dies. And Spock really gets hurt. I don't know why I bothered to go into the plot there. I'm not sure. Like, and I've said this before, we do not need the original series photocopied and given to us again. We just need a Star Trek show, right? We just need a Monster of the Week, Next Generation / original series Star Trek show. Even Lower Decks qualifies, although I wouldn't like that much comedy in the only actual Star Trek show. I don't want that to be the only one, right? Strange New Worlds is doing a great job of being the Star Trek show. Um, so we don't need Kirk, and we don't need all this older stuff coming in, and I don't want it to be. I don't want to say they shouldn't be doing that because it's fine. They did it in the Next Generation. They had people come back, but they were smart and they didn't have it linger. Like Kirk is there. We're going to see Kirk every fifth episode, I feel like. You know what I mean? And that means they have to talk about what's going to happen with Pike and when will Kirk take over the Enterprise and what's happening with Kirk's career and just a bunch of stuff that I don't think we really care about. I do want to point out this season had an excellent cliffhanger, which was number one, Una getting arrested, which was awesome and leads to probably one of the best episodes that they've ever done. The Strange New Worlds has ever done. And probably a list of 7 other Star Treks below it. One of the best episodes that they've ever done in any of those. 7's probably too high, but you know what I mean. It's a great episode dealing with that Una situation. Yeah, so this one's kind of a downer. I'd probably give this episode, I guess, a 6. Another big problem is, why would you want to watch your hero fail? Like, because that's what we're watching. We're just watching him screw it up, And I get, well, that's the plot. He has to screw it up. If he doesn't screw it up, then he won't have to die, and the kids won't have to die. And we want the kids to die, right? I don't know, man. I mean, this is just weird. This is a weird one. But I guess that's all I should say about that. It's been going on too long anyway. If you like this, hit the like button. If you want to see more like this, hit subscribe. We got a bunch coming. We got the new Philip K. Dick. Hopefully today. That's a strange thing to say on a YouTube video, but it should come up the same time this video does. I'll try to put them up together. I generally try to do that because I know that the Philip K. Dick is what most people are looking for as opposed to the Star Trek stuff. But I love the Star Trek stuff, so I'm not going to stop doing it, but I'm still going to do that as well. So everything's good. Yeah, thank you for watching.